Boom.
Okay. Hi guys, welcome back to the OCD Recovery channel. Nick and I are here on a Zoom call today just to talk about all things OCD. I don't have like a beverage with me to help me through this conversation, and I mean, trust me, I need one. But go ahead, Nick, say hi.
So what's going on, everyone? This is, I think, some of the things that Momin and I, Rob and I, were talking about doing. I know that I have one coming up planned. I think actually, Momin, it would be great if it was the three of us, you, me, and Jade. I think that would be a really good one.
I think that would be quite fun.
That would be hilarious. I don't know if you know this, Momin. In 2 weeks from now, do you know who will be sleeping at my house?
No.
Paul Little.
Oh, really?
So Paul and I are going to do a 30-minute long live, like together, sensory motor video. So that's going to be really cool. And I think what's really unique about doing this type of stuff from my perspective is that, you know, we're always talking through WhatsApp, obviously, and, you know, different, but sometimes it's difficult with our schedules and where we live around the world. Like I remember one of my buddies said to me, he said something like, it's so hard to get all my friends online at the same time about work. And I was in my mind, I'm like, yeah, the people I work with live in different countries, continents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, even I think whenever we have ever jumped on a call together, it's been a strange feeling because I mean, obviously I know you so well, but then at the same time, this kind of dynamic where it's a live video conversation, it's completely like...
It's completely, and for most people that don't know, Momin, tell everyone what time it is when we're doing webinars.
So when it's 1:30 in the night, but depending on what do you call it, the daylight hours, daylight savings, sorry. If you're doing daylight savings, it's either 12:30 at night or 1:30 at night. So but I'm there. I'm there. I still attend them because I'm like, hey,
this is actually a really good thing to talk about, actually, I think, to start the video off, because
so
no, real quick, because I think it's important to talk about this. A lot of the stuff we hear about sleep, right? We always hear people talking about sleep and the fear of sleep and all this stuff. Now, I didn't sleep that well last night, and I'm going hiking tomorrow, and I won't be sleeping at all. And Momin doesn't sleep.
Essentially, I mean, I have a friend who lives abroad. He was also like, "Do you ever sleep?" Because whenever I message you, you reply. You're always there. So the same. I mean, the same with me. Last night, I think I went to bed at 12:30 at night. And I was just tossing and turning around in bed because I just couldn't sleep. And I think I fell asleep when it was 4:30 a.m. And then I got up in the morning, I had my breakfast, went to the gym, and I'm here now. I haven't taken a nap or done anything in between. But I was like, okay, I can't sleep. I mean, what can I do? So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I am the prime example of someone who functions on very little sleep and does like everything in the day.
And it's because sleep-related fears are so big, right? I mean, and I think that it's understandable. I heard a terrific quote in a 1992 comedy special, so 30 years ago. So, and that was nothing like it is today. And they said that basically too many options and too much research is going to drive people crazy, because they don't live. They're always worried. And I see this, not even OCD sufferers. I mean, it's way outside, you know. Oh, I got to make sure my routine is perfect. I got to make sure. And what's really helped me in the last, say, 3 months, I was listening to a really good Stoic video talking about if you were to just like show up to a river and you were trying to like forcefully stop this river from flowing, you would not get very far. Like just standing in the river, like you wouldn't get far. And business and like recovery, we all think like, we think we're in so much more control than we are, right? We think we're in control. We have no control. It's just the illusion. And I think for what I noticed and what made me make so much progress in the last 6 months was, you know how it is, even a year and a half in, I remember catching myself at times thinking, man, I'm really still forcing this to a degree. Like, you don't even realize how much in the beginning, you're always forcing it. You're always forcing it in the beginning. We both see it, you know, come in, panic attack. They're like, what do I do right now? And then you and I just trying to give the best advice we can. I get it. Like, you sent a really long message, and then Momin and I are like, you know, we say, hey, you got to sit with it. And that's not the answer they want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, and I completely get, like, obviously people where they are, because when you're suffering, like, you don't see anything else other than the complete destruction of your life and your well-being. And and there is, like, you would turn the world upside down for that one solution, for that one way to get out of that, because you don't know how to handle that. The human brain cannot comprehend completely going into the abyss in that sense, because it thinks that it's sinking and sinking and sinking, and we think there's going to be something even worse that the body cannot handle, and you're just like, how do I crawl out of this?
Yes.
And I think being able to give people a little bit of tough love with compassion, that was something that I had to learn over time, and not just with talking to people in the groups and stuff, but even in real life at times, like with your friends as well. It's so, in real life settings, it's so difficult to give people like a push when they are feeling really low, because you want to comfort them, you want them to feel better. But you know what, I've also done the opposite thing as well. I have really comforted people when they're feeling low. I
I'm
have
not
given
good at
them
that.
reassurance, not to OCD separate.
That's
No, okay, so
well, you and me.
I'm the coach for that.
You and me have had to work on. It's funny because you're much more like Erica, where compassion and empathy comes very natural, more natural to you than it does to me. And Momin and I have had. This has been a learning lesson because I try and tell people it's not just the journey; it's also the learning lessons of working together, like you and me, because our styles can be different at times. And then we have Rob, who, like, Rob is very elegant in the way he explains philosophy, where, and everyone's going to respond differently, right? Like, some people love Jade's videos because Jade is like a mother. She's like a Mother Teresa. But you have other people who and this is not, there's no right or wrong here. I have people who will message me and be like, the reason why I like your videos is because you tell me I have to do my shit. And they're like, I really appreciate that. But I will say this, Momin, the one thing, and Momin and I have had we had one the other day. It wasn't really a disagreement, but Momin was absolutely correct. Sometimes when people just aren't ready to listen to any type of tough love, and if you try that approach, let's put it this way, compassion and empathy never backfire. You're never. Tough love can definitely have backfire, for sure.
And I think it also really just comes down to like dealing with people with different personalities. Like, I know what kind of approach would suit me if I needed some advice or support, and it's completely different for each person, because their personalities are so different. You have to talk to them and respond to what their cues are in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super. Well, that's what makes it so good, right? Because if you look at the people who are very, very active currently in OCD recovery from like the moderator standpoint, we actually have a very good variety of personalities. And that's why it's so cool. Like, I remember I was like, oh my gosh, Alexander really needs to share his story. I mean, he's living in the Ukraine. He's got all this crazy stuff going on. I'm sure he won't mind me saying this because I said it on the webinar. But, you know, we were on a one-to-one call about 6 weeks ago. I don't even know if you know this Moment. It was me, him, and Rob. And there was this sound in the background. It was like a very loud sound, like a fire alarm. And Rob goes, "What is that sound?" And it was the air raid drill. So I try and tell people, you know, even in very tough life scenarios, you have the ability to put the work in. You do have that ability.
So yeah, I had to go because, so this is what happens when you live in a house with so many other people. Like, and it's so difficult to sometimes find a good time to film a video as well, because people are coming and going, knocking, and there's like noise outside.
How many people do you live with?
So I have 3 elder siblings and obviously my parents. So we are 6 people. And then there's a house help as well. So you can make that like 9 people in the house.
You have 3 siblings. I don't even know who they are.
I know, we've never talked about that. Yeah, I have 3 elder siblings. I'm the youngest.
You're the young. Okay, so I have a younger sister. She actually just got engaged last week.
Oh,
so,
congratulations.
Yeah, so yeah. we joke around a lot because my sister is, let's put it this way, Momin. You think I don't like being told what to do? My sister is bad. I love her. It's like, so like what happened was, and my mom had to basically talk to her fiance because my sister, you know, he wanted one type of relationship. And my sister's like, look, when I want to go out, I'm going out. Like, she's like, I want to go out and party. Like, that's what my sister's like. She's been like that forever. She's a very loyal person, but my sister likes to get, for a better lack of words, lit. She really likes to get lit. So, and it's really funny. So they're getting married on a boat around, which is going to go around the harbor. But yeah, it's unfortunate because, you know, you grow out. Like, my sister and I haven't lived together for a decade, 10 years when I moved out. And it's almost like I messaged her the other day and I said, hey, I feel like I don't even know you anymore, you know, because it's like you just, life is so weird. And I think that's so relatable to OCD, right? Like, I try to tell people, you know, people just come and go. When you're working with this many people, like, someone might be present in the group for a year. You remember my original group? I don't even know where those people are. I don't know where they are. You know, so people just, they come and go for their own reasons. I just think you don't have to share your story. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it's interesting because I was at the gym today and I called up a friend who I haven't spoken to in I don't know how many months. She and I were in college together. And obviously in college, we used to hang out every day. We were in the same class. We had all the same courses, everything. And after college, I mean, you know how just you drift apart. So I think when my version of high school ended, I mean, we don't have high school over here, but I'm just like doing the equivalent of what you guys have.
Yeah.
So when high school ended, I think that was the time where I just really, at a very early stage in that sense, I really.
Ooh, Momin, did you cut out on me? I think you froze on me, Momin. Ooh, I think I might have lost you.
I have with them because I know that I might not be able to have this forever with that person. So I'm happy, even if a friendship has lasted for 2 years and then we've drifted apart, I'm okay with that, because that's life. You can't always relate at the same level with each other at all times. People's lives change, your conversations change, your relatability with each other changes, and that's how it is, and that's with relationships as well. I mean, that's why I feel like the concept of the one maybe doesn't exist, because you might be with someone for 2 years and then you just become such different people that you're not able to be together in a successful way.
No, absolutely.
And if you are able to be successful together for longer, then obviously that's great. I mean, that's a relationship that you last. I mean, and many relationships, friendships or romantic relationships do last so many years. But if it doesn't, that's just human. That's just the human reality of our life.
It's a really unique concept, because I was talking about like blood related siblings, like in that regard. And I remember having this conversation with Rob, actually. And Rob was like, this was maybe a week ago. He's like, well, why don't you speak to your sister anymore? And if my sister watches this, she knows, obviously we've talked about stuff like this. If you take away the concept of your sister, although she's your sibling, even if she's living with you and moves away, there's no difference between that and a friend. Like when someone's like, oh, you're not close to your sister anymore, it's like, well, she's just a human. Just because we have the same blood, she's still just a human. You know, my roommates in college, I knew way better than my family members. I lived with them for 4 years. I knew them really well. So I think humans, we just attach so much meaning. Like the hierarchy of values gets people into big trouble. I don't think there's anything wrong with hierarchies of values.
And you know, it's interesting you point that out as well, because there's also a big difference in culture over here as well. So in like over here in brown family systems, you're basically supposed to live together almost kind of like forever. So I mean, my sister is what 36 now. She's still like and she's unmarried, so we're all still living. We've all lived together for our entire lives. And I feel like on your end of the world, like you start moving out pretty quickly, and it's pretty, in that sense, normal. So for us to break away from the family like that is a huge deal. It's a big thing over here, and that's why it's so often difficult for people. And it's also then interesting, even with if you talk to people from Pakistan or India who are on the recovery groups or the support group on Facebook or something. For them, family values what society thinks. OCD latches onto that so easily, because for us it's like, oh, we're together forever, and everyone is like this in each other's face all the time, and it has its benefits. I'm not saying that in a negative way necessarily, but it's interesting how like the difference in fears and anxieties can shift a little bit in that sense based on the culture that you're in as well.
So
okay, we're back.
I think it's really interesting. What I've noticed for myself with going through OCD recovery is the things that I have values. I mean, I definitely have values, or else I would just go out there and like push women over. Like I have values. I just would trick people. I would throw babies. Like I have values, but I don't think values are the problem. Like we just hold on to our values so conditionally. You know, like I have a value of being healthy, hiking, being in shape. It's a small value, but I don't need that value to live. I don't need that value to live my life. And I think that's what gets so many people into trouble with OCD, especially POCD, harm OCD, contamination OCD, the fear of
those things are like the more taboo themes. Those go directly for your values. I mean, those capitalize on how much you value your values. And I mean, same thing. I think for me, like having friendships and dynamics in my life where there's room for empathy and compassion is like a big value for me personally. But obviously there have been moments where I have not acted as compassionately or as empathetically as I could have, or as the other person wanted me to. But then the difference is that I'm not replaying that in my head constantly and making myself guilty for it for the next 10 years. I mean, I dislike that I did that. I mean, I messed up. I own that mistake. I own that responsibility. but then I don't like define myself by that one thing and just punch myself like, why did I do this? You should have been better. Like I messed up.
It's very easy to do that. And
Yes.
these things, I think they go so much further beyond OCD. I always tell people the Ellis principles were not made for OCD sufferers, and they were made for people who don't have OCD and other forms of neurosis. I mean, it's really important to say that because you're muted. I can't hear you.
You are mute.
I was muted?
Yes, you were muted.
That's weird. So
Sorry.
Can you hear me now though?
I can hear you. So you were saying that Ellis's concepts weren't made geared towards people.
No, Ellis's concepts are in any sort of stoicism, REBT concepts were not made for sufferers. They were made for people who didn't have mental health disorders. Now, yes, he worked with people who have neurosis and PTSD, but they weren't made for that. They were made for the people who held these really strong irrational beliefs around relationships, really strong irrational beliefs about, and the biggest misconception,
other people.
Exactly. And the biggest misconception is this, is when people say to me, it's only applicable for when you're suffering. That's not true. That's not true.
Yeah.
Because
or when people say that OCD is not mentioned in the book, so therefore, I mean, how can it be relevant for OCD?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see where I was, and you were the same way, because people see us the way we are now, but both of us were really messed up. I mean, we were really, really messed up. It's like, I mean, when you were telling me your stories about how long it took you to leave your bedroom to get water, I was like, whoa, like,
And you don't like the amount of conversations I had with the therapist I had at the time as well. I was just so miserable. I was also just constantly like radiating bitterness and just like my family, I feel like, became almost afraid to even approach me because they were like, okay, he is someone who just maybe does not like interacting. He keeps us at a distance. Like, we don't know what's up, so let's just leave him be. And I mean, I was an asshole at home. I feel like, and not that I never lashed out on anybody, but I feel like I just had this death face that gave that vibe.
Were you short? Like you didn't give long responses? Like you just were kind of like very cut off?
Yeah, I didn't give very long responses. I basically, because I was just chained to my bedroom, I didn't go outside in the lounge and spend time with them and sit with them and talk to them. So they thought, they had the impression that I just didn't like spending time with them.
Here's a good question for you. And I think this is hard because people, if you're finding this video and you don't have OCD, it's hard to imagine that this is possible. How many years were you chronically anxious for?
So
mine was
I feel
only
like
2 years.
Oh,
yeah.
No. For me, it's like I would say, I mean, 2013 till 2019/2020 were probably my worst years.
Wow.
I had like really bad bouts of and phases of OCD suffering before that as well. But 2013 was the time that I felt like it had completely taken over my life. And it went up till 2019 like that. My life was just completely taken over by chronic suffering all the time.
And that's what's so interesting, because people, when my friends, like my good friends, and I try to explain them, you'll laugh at this. We don't need to explain to anyone, but Erica, I remember a while ago, she's like, can you explain to me what it's like so I can maybe understand? And I was like, well, there's not really any way, So she was
Mm.
sitting at the kitchen table, okay?
Mm.
And I came up behind her and I went like this and I banged on the wall. And she like levitated and was like, why'd you do that? And I said, imagine if you felt like that all day long for 3 years. And she was like, oh, like, I was like, that's what it's like. It's like, you feel like there's almost a demon, like just breathing on your neck at all times.
Yes. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not that the demon is there. You can't catch them. If you turn around, it's gone. Like it's so you're always searching.
To be honest, you don't even know what the demon is.
No,
Like,
no
so,
idea.
I mean, so, okay. I, for the longest time, it was for me, even when I realized I had OCD, I was trying to look at what am I afraid of? And it was, for me, it was this very abstract, elusive kind of concept that I'm afraid that my life will be ruined. And if somebody asked me, okay, what in your life would be ruined? I wouldn't really have a concrete answer.
No.
I would be like, not sure. I guess I would not have friends anymore. I guess I would not be happy anymore. I mean, I would guess. I wouldn't have any concrete, substantial answer of what I think life ruining meant. So it's like you want to catch that demon, you want to identify the demon, but you don't even know what the demon is. So, and that's why like OCD just gets you into that spiral because. And in fact, I think that's why the fear level is so high because you don't know what you're fighting.
No.
You're fighting something, but you don't know what it is exactly that you're fighting.
It's really, excuse me, it's really, I think especially the people in the WhatsApp groups or when people come to webinars for the first time, you know, one of the biggest problems in OCD is, here's the best way to explain it. In me being in medical, I see this a lot. In my profession, chiropractic, people don't want to change. They want to be a 1900 chiropractor. That is totally fine. But because things change, people get, it's very hard to admit defeat. So if you're someone who's been working with OCD for 30 years, and at the time, you thought thoughts was the best thing, and that's all you've been doing for 30 years in your practice. And all of a sudden, we know it's not really the best option. It's hard to be like, oh shit, what I've been doing wasn't the best. It's hard to do that, whoever it is. And I think that, you know, in 10 years from now, we might learn something new. And we have to change.
Yeah.
We have to change for what's best for the people that have OCD and anxiety disorders. Now, I had a very interesting conversation recently with a friend of mine, talking about the differences between personality disorders. Now, this is going to trigger OCD people. Personality disorders and anxiety disorders. Now, we're lucky because we know we can recover from OCD. They do not think you can recover from bipolar. They don't, it's a personality disorder. So I don't say that when it will trigger you. If you have fear of mental illness or schizophrenia, that will trigger you hearing that. But we also need to be fortunate that we can get better. Like we can get better. You know,
I know. Look, I mean, and the reason that we can, so obviously I'm sure there are like treatments and ways to recover and get better from like all those other kinds of disorders as well, whether it's a personality disorder or whether it's something else. It's just that because we don't suffer from it, we don't know. And therefore, we can't say anything about that really in that sense. And the same with like, if we weren't suffering from OCD, I won't even know what like disputing your thoughts is. I'd be like, what? I mean, who wants to do that?
No, for real. Seriously.
I don't want to spend my time doing that.
Yeah. Disputing, and it's funny you say that because for myself and for you as well, exposures were way more necessary for you. They were not necessary for me. And this is good to talk about because it goes to show you how different some of the fears are. But the unconditional acceptance is key. if you're watching this
Yeah.
and you're struggling with recovery, the only thing that has brought me to where I am, like substantially, is changing my relationship with my fears. Because I was working with a sensory motor sufferer, and they said to me, they're like, look, I went on vacation and I was super, super happy. And then I came back and I was triggered. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you still haven't accepted that it might not ever go. And this is why I always tell people working on OCD with the thought that it's never going to go. You want it to go. You want to recover from OCD. But that's not how people work on OCD. They work on OCD like they want it. They're like, I need it. I need you to go. I worked on OCD with, if it goes, awesome. And if it doesn't go, that sucks, but I could still live my life.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was also working on recovery, it was more about, it was like, I just want to improve my well-being. I mean, it was like, can this improve? I don't know. Let's see. In fact, it's good you bring this up because I think somewhere midway in my journey, I was absolutely convinced that recovery is not for me. I thought, recovery is for other people. They're able to do exposures and whatnot. I have been trying for a year and a half at this point to try to do exposures, to push myself, to find that confidence to do it. But I guess it's not for me. I mean, my anxiety is way better, but I'm fine with it being this way. It's okay if I don't reach that recovery label. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But the interesting part is, even while I had completely accepted that this is it for me, I was still doing exposures. I was still doing them and thinking that, okay, I mean, this may or may not work. I'm just doing it anyway. What's the harm in doing an exposure, really? There's no harm in trying something new, but recovery is not for me. And somehow I was still able to then recover. Like,
and exposures are interesting. That's another thing too. Exposure, ERP, if you want to call it the technical term, is not just for people who suffer with mental illness. People that want to do anything in life that's new, they need to get uncomfortable. So like, think about someone, I have a friend who has really bad social anxiety, doesn't have OCD, just doesn't like being in public. Well, they don't go out, they don't give speeches. The only way to get over that is to expose yourself and change your beliefs. So, I see it when people, what they do is, and little things too. Okay, here's a big one. You're a celebrity, okay? You're an A-list celebrity, and I understand why you do this. I see why people do it. They say, I'm done. No more social media. They delete all social media and they move to some island. I understand why that seems like the right thing to do. Long term, you're actually not doing what I think is best for yourself.
I did that. By the way, I did that. Again, in 2013 when I started college, I think the light will be just back up again.
That's fine.
So
yeah.
And so when I started college and my anxiety was just like terrible. I started to take breaks from social media because I thought this is too much. I just need to detox. I just need to disconnect. I'm already too anxious. And social media is triggering me in many, many ways. So just like take breaks. And then eventually what happened was, even though my friends begged me not to do it, I deleted my Facebook account because I mean, there were so many memories with my friends from that account, but I just did it because I just want to get rid of it. I was like, there's so many triggers on social media. I don't want to be on there. I don't want to go on there. I don't want to see this content and that picture and this and this. So just delete everything. And it gave me such a big relief, but obviously momentarily. I mean, because OCD still existed in my life in so many other ways, but I did that. I deleted my social media and I was like, I can't do this.
I think, and I see that really.
Now I regret it.
Yeah, and I see it. It's super common in the communities of anxiety in general. There was a post this morning that I commented on where people say, someone said social media is toxic for recovery. And I totally see why we think that. I have a friend of mine who I work with in person. She's a patient of mine in my regular practice. We just talk about fears. And she said to me, she's very political. She said, I deleted everyone from the opposite political side as me. I said, well, I don't think that's the right choice because you've put your life in a bubble to any time you see anything that disagrees with you, you're probably going to get very triggered. And then what you do is, as a human, you go, that's why I'm triggered. No, you deleted, you avoided, your belief system is causing the triggering. I'm not saying let me give you another good example.
But I mean, just want to highlight, but obviously, like, balance is, like we always say, balance is key over here. But because, I mean, because if you are constantly on social media, there's so much contradictory and there's so many new concepts every single day. Like the other day, even in the WhatsApp group, there was this conversation about the ick. I was like, what is the ick? And it's apparently this new concept. I think it's a new concept. I've never heard of this before, at least.
Yeah.
But in relationships where you just cannot see your partner the same way anymore ever again, and the feelings change permanently. So there's the ick. There's this concept, and I was like, where are these concepts even coming from? I don't know who is inventing them. I don't know who is disseminating this information out there. But and I do think, again, balance is key. That you don't want to completely delete and just avoid everything and have a clean slate, but also getting too much into these labels, these headings, categories, and it jumbles your brain. And I wasn't too deep in that Insta therapy kind of rabbit hole, but I there was a time where I was just seeing so much constant narratives about trauma and all these different notions and everything, and it just started to jumble my head, and I was like, which is the right approach? Which is the right thing? Like, which thing makes more sense to me? Everything seems to make sense for me, and yet nothing seems to make sense for me. Like, so I just had to really take a step back from all of that, because you start to check, and then you relate, you compare, and it just becomes like
and I think trauma is a great thing to talk about for a little bit. I have a very unpopular opinion on trauma. What I've noticed with everyone I know, not even OCD, is that trauma is like the word puro. It doesn't add any value to your life. And all it does is you attach your identity to something. Trauma, it's so overused, and people are. I was at a business conference 3 weeks ago, and some guy, every time he started this business, had nothing to do with mental health. He was like, once a trauma survivor, always a trauma survivor. And I was like, where is this even coming from? Like, you could just tell how much he held on to this belief. That hinders your life.
And I'll briefly talk about my my trajectory with dealing with trauma and stuff like that. So and I mean, again, it's about whether you label yourself one thing or not. But so in that sense, I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. I experienced it when I was a kid. So, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was what happened to me, and it was only like 8-9 years later when I was in therapy, where my therapist was like, this was sexual abuse. This was not something you did. And I was like, wait, what? And that just like altered and everything just started to really make sense of why I was feeling the way I was feeling, why I was thinking the way I was thinking, all those things. So there was a lot that came up with that. So for a few years after that, I was viewing myself from the absolute lens of trauma survivor. And just like, and that's where I started to read a lot about trauma, of what trauma, how it affects you, how it makes you, what kind of feelings it makes you have, all these different things about like trauma responses and whatnot. And also it made sense to me because that was, I mean, I was doing those things, and I saw those things in the way I behaved. But I think, and that was an important journey for me because it did give me a lot of insight into just me as a person and what I had been doing and what I had been feeling when I was a kid. Because when you're a kid, you're not self-aware. You don't know like why you're feeling the way you're feeling. You're just
No
living
idea.
life.
Yeah.
So for me, it gave me like quite a lot of insight about my younger years. But then I think that's where, and simultaneously, I was also dealing with OCD. I mean, I was trying to, sorry, let me just, I was getting a call, so I just canceled that. So I think with OCD, I was dealing with that as well on the side. And I thought, I was absolutely convinced because I had limited knowledge. Um, I was absolutely convinced that by talking about my trauma, by resolving my trauma in myself and accepting that, my OCD will also go away, because my trauma, in my head, I thought my trauma is absolutely linked to my OCD, and the solution in my OCD is in my trauma. So, but then and because of that, I was in this for a few years. I was in this cycle of constantly analyzing my feelings, constantly analyzing my behaviors. And whenever something would happen, for example, if someone would make me upset, my brain would immediately connect it to, oh, because I had trauma in the past, therefore I am feeling this way in the present moment. And I was in this constant cycle of checking and analyzing. And I think after 4 or 5 years, I thought, what am I doing to myself? Because I have talked about my childhood. I've talked about that incident so many times at this point, and I am constantly just viewing myself in that box, in that definition of trauma survivor. Everything that happens in my life, I'm like trauma, 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 trauma. And so I was like, yes, that happened to me. That has happened to me, and that has affected me in many ways, and it has shaped a lot of my experiences and my learning about life at large and whatnot. But why am I defining myself by it? Why am I defining every single moment in the present moment of my life by that one past event? I am doing that to myself. Nobody else is doing that to me. I am doing that to myself by viewing myself in that just
And let me give
category.
you another great example. Rob knows this. I don't talk about it a whole lot at OCD because it's not what we do. But I would say I'm pretty political, or I was until recently, and I kind of realized something. Like I realized when you identify with something, like whether you say you're a Democrat or a liberal or a Christian or a whatever there's no biological tendencies to that. So let me give you an example. It says like, I'm a boy, there's a biological tendency to what we mean by that. When someone says I'm a Democrat, that's not connected to your biology. That's just a title that you gave yourself. So when you walk around all day and you're like, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or I'm a Catholic, and then you see something that has a different view, your automatic response usually is anger, because you're like, that's not how we see things. And I try and tell people, like, you're not Christian. When they want to have this conversation, they ask me my opinion. I never bring this up, but my good friend's very, very religious. And I said, in my opinion, you're not a Christian. You are a person who believes in Christianity. You're also someone who likes pizza and you like baseball. You're not a baseball player. I mean, look what happens in America. You see how much we put sports on a pedestal in this country.
Yeah.
When someone is a top baseball player and then they're no longer in baseball, many of them get depressed. and turn to drugs and alcohol because they're like, their sense of identity has gone.
Identity. Yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
a,
and that's why you have to view yourself as a collection of all the various things in your life, of all the experiences, and again, and that's where the else concept also comes in, where you can rate your thoughts and your behaviors and your personality traits, but you cannot define yourself by that one thing, whether it's a good or a bad thing. You cannot define your entire self because that's just one blip in your life. That's one thing in your life, but there's so many other things. And so there's where I started to make the difference. And I'm not a trauma survivor. I'm someone who survived trauma. It's a very subtle, slight difference,
yeah.
but for someone who's been through it, it made a huge difference. And I started to view myself with much more healthier goggles. Because before that, because the prominent narrative that you just read about trauma online is that you are permanently for life affected by it. And I can understand that in the context of how it can shape you as a person as you go along your personal journey. But I think something about that wording also makes people think that forever they will have all those trauma responses even when they're 60, 80 years old. They will always be permanently damaged. That's the view that you start to have of yourself, that you are a damaged, broken person.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that really needs to change.
In the mental hospital, I was chronically stuck with, you know how it is. You were there with me. We're all there. Rob, Jade, Paul Little, everyone, whether you're stuck now, you were stuck. It doesn't matter.
Yes, we were all in the same room in the mental hospital together, remember?
That was a great experience, by the way. That was a really interesting experience. But screaming that people must respect you. And I understand why we do this, because this is how everyone operates. They operate by like, you need to hear me. And I know this because you've seen how much I've changed in 2 years. Remember what I was like when I first came in. I was combative. I was stubborn. I was angry. If you remember, we were having a conversation about—
No, everything was fine.
Yeah.
Everything was fine.
Yeah, I was tough. I was really tough. We had a conversation about arranged marriages. And I was like, that's the stupidest shit. That's so dumb. That's moronic. Now, when I talk to our OCD sufferers, I'm like, my perception has changed so drastically on things I was so black and white on. And it's given me this internal peace. Like, it's a very, and this is something I've even just been starting to realize recently. My anxiety, not sensory motor. I've recovered from sensory motor a while ago, but I had GAD for about a year after that. Rob and I really had to work on that as well. He goes, your nerves have just been so sensitized. So I've been a lot more calm lately. And Erica has been like, what's wrong with you? Are you depressed? I was like, no. I was like, I'm just not anxious. It's weird. Like, I was like, I'm very, very calm. I don't need to, I don't know how to explain it.
No, I get that, because so this is interesting because just last year, my friends and I went to Islamabad, which is like another city over here from Lahore, and we were just on our way back from Lahore, from Islamabad, and on the way back we started having this conversation about, okay, since school, because we've known each other since we were kids, who do we think has changed the most? And so we started to like go one by one. Oh, this guy, you used to be like this, and now you're like this, and blah blah. And then when they came to me, they were like, we think you are the person who has probably changed the most, because I used to be someone who was very high energy, hyper, like just, I was anxious, yes, but I don't know if you can relate to this. I had more anxious energy than I was anxious itself. Like, I was just very I mean, I just felt like I had to do something in that sense. So I was just very, zapping from like one point to another. And now they say you're just very calm as a person. Like you used to be just very hyper. And I know, looking back, when I was hyper because it came from a place of wanting approval, wanting validation, wanting to be liked, wanting to be like the center of attention. In that sense, it came from that place. And now, when I don't need those things anymore, that hyperness has gone away because I don't need that in my life anymore. So, and I broke down in that when they were like talking about me, when they were analyzing me, I don't know why it made me so emotional. I just broke down and I started to cry. I just thought, oh God, like, I mean, now if I really sit and think about it, the person I was and the person I am now, I cannot, that person could have never imagined being this person that I am right now.
Yeah, I kind of have like a little bit of a weird, like almost an existential moment last week because I was thinking about, I'm like, wow, well, I have this image around me where people are like, this is how he is. But I was like, yeah, that's how I was at the time. That's not who I am now because
It's a cycle, because you build this image of yourself, and then other people are constantly expecting you to be like that, and then you very subconsciously you start behaving that way because that's what people expect of you. That's the role that you have adopted
well,
for
that's
yourself.
why.
I became the jokester and the funny
Yes.
hyper guy of the group, and I thought I had to fulfill that role.
Well, that's why if you look at they call it the tragic side of comedy. So look at Robin Williams. Look at, Chris Farley. The reason why comedians, in my opinion, commit suicide at a very high rate is because it's a job. Their job is to be funny. So when they're not like that on camera, Jim Carrey, if you remember, Jim Carrey went through a big depression. He was in an interview and they asked him what happened to him. He goes, one day I realized that I had played so many funny roles, I didn't know who I was. And he goes, that existential thought freaked me out so much because and Erica, I've had to kind of like understand with Erica, where Erica's been like, are you okay? And then I kind of get frustrated. I'm like, yeah, of course I'm okay, but she's seen me in a different light, So I don't, fortunately for myself, if everyone in the world was like, why are you not the Nick? That wouldn't bother me personally. I don't look at it like that. I look at it as more of an internal thing. It's more of like I'm like, wow, this is interesting.
And sorry, complete your thought.
It was just, I'm like, it's interesting because I just know that I tried so hard for approval that I don't need to do that at all.
Yeah.
I don't need to do it. And it's kind of been, because I used to look at Rob and I'd be like, God, Rob is like so calm. Like I can't even imagine being like that. But now things that happen in my, in anything, people tagging me and yelling at me on social media because I'm becoming more prominent in the community. So I get tagged in hate, people DM me. Those things, there's no reaction. Like it's indifferent. And that kind of freaked me out too. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that's like.
I used to care about these things so much, and how am I so chill about it?
It's weird. It definitely will at some point. I think no matter who you are, will put you through like a mini existential almost crisis because you're like,
who am I?
Exactly, because you just don't.
And how did I get here? Like, when did I get here? I mean, even now, there are times when sometimes when my jokes don't land, like when I'm with my friends or when we're just talking in our WhatsApp group or something, when my jokes don't land, it kind of makes me feel like, wait, I'm almost offended that my joke wasn't funny to people, but also I kind of don't care as well. So like both those, because when you're still changing as a person, when you're still learning to not attach so much meaning to those things that you used to, there's that reminder, that kind of tinge of that feeling a little bit, but also you feel like, okay, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I wish they found it funny. I wish they laughed, but too bad. What can I do? Let's move on.
Exactly, and that's what's so unique about it. It's and I think it's a good place to end it, because I got to leave here in a couple of minutes. This is a great place to end it, in my opinion. OCD recovery is so much more than OCD. It's so it's a piece. It's a piece. It's about. I saw a terrific quote the other day. So I've been thinking about it constantly. It said, Stoicism is not about losing your emotions. It's about regulating your emotions. And that is so, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever read, because I thought for so long, like most people, I was going to become this robot. But people think people are addicted to fear. People are so addicted to emotions. They are addicted. They're addicted to the emotion fear brings. They're addicted to happiness. They're addicted to anger. Oh, I have to be angry to get my point across. It's just not true.
And we completely get that, because we were those people. I was addicted to my emotions like so much that I thought that I need to define every single thing I do in my life by my emotions. I need to listen to them all the time and behave according to them. It was not a great life.
No.
I mean, and just to add my, like, what words I want to contribute is also, like, recovery is not getting rid of OCD. I mean, sure, that might be part of it in a sense. But it's self-transformation and self-development. And you don't, in fact, when you become this person, like whoever you want to be, like right now, when you're suffering and when you're deeply irrational, you don't even know the person that you actually want to be. But when you become that person, you think, oh, this is the person I wanted to be actually. You know what I mean? So it's like you see it when it happens to you in that sense.
Absolutely. Well, Momin, I really appreciate this conversation. It was a great talk.
Same here. Even if this doesn't go up, at least I still like having this interaction.
No, it's great. Yeah. And I think it's good to, our goal should be to get Rob on here, because Rob. Listen, Rob's as rational as he is. I like joking with him. He could be stubborn sometimes when it comes to stuff like this. He could be stubborn. I said to him, even Erica was like, Rob really doesn't like meetings. I said, no, he hates them. He hates meetings. I like him. So, Momin, enjoy the rest of your night. We'll talk soon.
You too. All right.